Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Again, my name is Megan Brusso and have been with the bank. It's coming on 4 years, joined straight out of undergrad, and I'm realizing when I started undergrad, you guys weren't even in school. When I was graduating school, you still weren't in school. So I'm feeling so old, but still so excited to be here and love the energy today. I'm really bad with formal presentations. I tend to go off in tangents. So my boss said, you got to be focused on a panel. I'm like, okay. So we're going to go as concise as I can, but really just want to have some fun with you all today. Again, I'll go kind of briefly through the presentation, spin off into my own kind of stories as well, and then I'll make sure that I leave some time for you to ask me questions. But just wanted to start by kind of getting a feel for the room. How many of you are freshmen? Sophomores? Oh my gosh, good job. Good job. I was not doing anything like this my sophomore year, so congratulations to you for being up so early, too. Juniors? Excellent. And seniors? Awesome. So the fun part about my job, I work as the Management Development Program recruiter, having gone through it. So it's really kind of come full circle for me, but I get to look at hundreds of resumes basically weekly. And it's so hard when there are so many resumes to find the one that sticks out, that speaks to me. So I want to help you in kind of crafting it, but knowing that that's your time, to really shine. And so I'll kind of go through a little bit about what I want to cover with you. Again, why is a resume important? It's so competitive in the job search. And clearly, you're all doing so much to already achieve success by being here today, but what can you do on your resume to really make sure that recruiter, when they're sifting through hundreds of resumes, are like, yes, I'm going to go with this one, and we're moving forward ASAP. I want to go a little bit through each of the specific sections of a resume, what you should include, what's going to, again, catch my eye, as well as some of the do's and don'ts with some examples. Then, of course, I'll leave time for questions, but make sure you leave here today with, I brought a copy of the presentation for you. Again, might be good for crafting your resume. There's some that I highlighted that stuck out to me when looking through resumes. So feel free to use it. I asked all the people if I could use samples of their resume, and they said yes. So it's yours. It's kind of your free takeaway. I know there's some good prizes today. Maybe not as cool as the prizes you might get, but you still get to leave with something. Also, I have a gift box for anyone who asks questions too. So, why is a resume important? Again, I shared with you it's so competitive in the sense of the job market now, and how do you really tell your story? That's what a resume is. It's the first chance for you to get your name out there, your word out there to a potential employer. So think of it as, this is my first impression, is that resume. And it's much easier to secure a position when they get to meet you. That's your time to shine, but they're not going to be able to meet you unless they choose your resume. So that's why it's so important, again, and I think interviews can be viewed as your first impression, but really in my eyes, it's a resume. That's your first impression. So important that you spend some time on it. And I think it's funny that I was selected for this panel, again, because I look at hundreds of them, but I can tell you I haven't crafted a resume of my own in 4 years. I love my job at the bank. I'm not trying to leave. So it's making me realize it doesn't mean that I want to leave. It's keeping it fresh in your mind to understand, what did I accomplish? What am I doing? What did I do a couple of years ago that I should be highlighting? I have to do a refresher. So that's going to be my homework assignment. The next week or two, I'm going to work on kind of dusting that resume off a bit because it's not where it needs to be right now. We'll tell you a little about what you should be focusing on highlighting. Again, it's your story. It's really what you've accomplished. It's what you want that person to know and ask you during the interview. What can really help to stand you apart? So really ensure that you are emphasizing any leadership experiences, anything that you're involved with. Definitely highlight different internship experiences. Really looking for some sort of academic performance too. If you made the dean's list, put that on there. That's one of my favorite things to call out in an interview, is to congratulate you and say congratulations on doing that. I will tell you, really look at the jobs that you're going for in terms of the qualifications and try to find ways to highlight that, to bring that at the center of your resume so that when that recruiter is looking for specific skills or tasks that you've done that correlate to the job, make sure that you're looking at those job descriptions of the job you're going to help in crafting your resume. I will tell you, when looking at the management development program job description, I'm seeking leadership, but I have to have a 3.0 minimum GPA. So if you're above a 3.0, make sure you put that on there. I do my best to reach out to career services to understand if the candidates who I'm about to interview on campus meet that GPA but didn't put it on. I want to know that, but it depends on the turnaround time. And can I make that possible, where some candidates get knocked out of the pack because they don't have their GPA on there, but they might be qualified. It's just trying to figure out, when we're recruiting at 60 plus schools, trying to make it all happen in a couple of weeks' time. If I don't see that GPA on the resume, I'm going to reach out to career services and say, do they meet? If they don't turn it around by the deadline, I might not get to meet you. So definitely put that on there. If you're just under a 3.0 GPA, that's okay. Write a cover letter and explain why. I'm going to fight for you for other positions, or keep track of you and want to know, how did midterms go? Where are you at now? So don't be afraid to not put it on, but at least somewhere explain, where you're at in terms of GPA, especially for the jobs that you're going for, if it requires it. I think, again, to be able to call out Dean's List is important. To be able to explain that you're a presidential scholarship holder or a scholarship you earned outside of even Delaware State, put that on there. We're our toughest critics. That is really what I have come to find. But sell yourself. It's okay to be able to highlight the things that you've accomplished that you're proud of. Don't be afraid to put that on a resume. I think also, obviously you heard I'm super passionate about philanthropic work and volunteerism. It's usually a guaranteed question that I'm going to ask someone in an interview if they have it on their resume, their experience, anything that you're involved with. It's going to showcase your passion, your dedication, the fact that you're able to balance and prioritize multiple items. That's what I seek. I've come across candidates who are 4.0 students, and they're a student, and that's it. Show me what else you got. Are you involved in internships? Are you involved on campus? Do you do other things in the community? Because M&T, I'm going to care a lot more about a 3.0 GPA of someone who's done multiple things while maintaining that GPA. 4.0, that's fantastic, but what else have you been doing outside of school to really continue to advance and really keep working on yourself? So I think that's what I would recommend, is that resume is going to be killer and going to be what it needs to be based on what you're involved with, what you're doing. So don't be afraid to go for an internship or a part-time job, or if there's a finance club that you're like, do I need to join it? Do it. If you don't like it, you don't have to put it on your resume, but really try and find some things that you're excited about that's going to continue to allow that prioritization and time management. Those are the resumes that I look for. Again, don't be afraid to sell yourself short on a resume. And I think the best way to do this is to really make sure you have a couple of sets of eyes on it. It's a work in process for sure. It's a document that's going to continue to grow, each semester when you're involved with more things. And I think whether it be finding a friend or a professor or anyone in career services, I can't believe your dean is just so passionate. She wants you all to succeed. So I can imagine you saying, hey, can you take a glance at this resume? The people that you've made an impact on and met over the course of your time here, they're going to say, did you forget about that awesome paper you wrote or that project that you ran with and you did such a great job? Seek people out who are going to give you honest feedback. I think that's really important. And I don't ever submit any type of documentation without my closest friends at work looking at it, or my boss, because they're going to say, how did you forget about this? My performance review this year. My boss said, okay, this is all great, but you left out one of the biggest successes that I called out for you. And it's just things you forget about when you're doing so much. Don't be afraid to have a couple of sets of eyes looking on that resume, constantly critiquing it, and really being able to help you and selling yourself. That's the point of the resume. Here's kind of a tip that I know, again, I told you I have to work on my resume for sure. This is going to be my homework. But I think looking at any type of review that you've had, if you've had part-time jobs, if you've had an internship, if you've had, some sort of feedback given to you by a boss or a professor, group project member even, if they can help you in, showing your success, to pull that out, team player, to have someone say, this person went above and beyond in this project, reading through feedback on yourself, definitely pull some of that out in terms of calling it out on a resume. I think that's really important. I think also looking at, a performance review at work, it's going to help you to remember your objectives. What did your boss tell you to do in terms of, here's the duties, but here's a stretch goal, to think about all that you've been able to balance and highlight that on a resume. So going to the direct source, I think to think about the internships that you're applying to. If you can just save a snapshot on your phone, or save it in a folder via your email, those job descriptions that you're going for, makes it really easy to leverage that work that's already been done in terms of what will the job entail, to put that on your resume. You can put your own spin on it and what you've done, and again, highlight your success there, but really kind of take snapshots of all the internships you're applying to, the part-time jobs, and it's going to help you in crafting what did you do while you were there. Probably going to do more than what the generic job description said, but I can tell you that's 100% where I'm going for mine to help in, putting the right duties listed on the resume. Huge thing for me when looking at a resume, I think it's so important. Again, it's your first impression. Make sure there aren't any typos. Make sure that there aren't grammatical errors or different fonts. I've got really bad eyesight from looking at a computer screen all day for so long, and to see dizzy fonts are different. If their name, address, email is different than the body of it, sometimes it throws me off. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I can tell you multiple typos are. Grammatical errors definitely are. So really, again, why it's probably a good idea to have multiple people look it over for you. Someone you trust, someone who you know is going to do it. My mom still proofreads my papers to this day, to be quite honest with you. So find someone who you trust who's really going to look at it for you. So wanted to spend some time going through the specific sections of the resume with you. I can tell you right off the bat, an objective at the top of your resume, it's not a make or break. It's not a deal breaker. You don't have to have it. If you want to have it, make sure that it's pointed. If you're applying to, let's say, 4 jobs, make sure that you're not putting the wrong objective on for the wrong company. You'd be shocked how many times I see that in a month. Just make sure that, if you're going for a job at M&T Bank, at Deloitte, spell it out. Take the time, if you're going to put the objective on it, to craft it for the specific company and position that you're going for. Again, not a deal breaker. I really probably see in 10 resumes one who has the objective on there. But if it tells me, yes, I want to obtain a position with M&T Bank in the management development program on the retail track, whoa, okay, we're going to have a serious conversation about why do you know about that? How do you know that you want to do that? Versus no objective, I don't have them coming out and saying, yes, this is what I want. So, if you find the job full-time or even a part-time internship that you want, don't be afraid to spell that out. Just top quick line saying this is what I want, and even spin it to say why, to continue to stretch myself, continue to build on the skills that I'm learning in the classroom. Again, education, this section's so important. The fact that you're here, employers want to find this talent. They're looking for you. So definitely put that you're at Delaware State. Put your major on there. I think my favorite question to ask is, tell me about, how did you pick business? Did you come in a math major? Did you come in an education major? Tell me the story of how you got to business. You'd be shocked at how it tells me about the way that you think and how you navigated yourself here, and going to tell me how you're going to navigate yourself in an actual career. So definitely call out any majors that you've declared, minors. I love to see concentrations, to see, you're kind of trying to find a balance in your curriculum, something that you're passionate about, something that you want to do. The best conversations I have are a business major with a history minor. Well, tell me about that. I love history. Well, you're going to do great at the bank because there's a whole lot of history in terms of the financial sector, growth. the history of the company, I can always spin that in a fun way. So definitely highlight anything, that you're doing curriculum-wise here. I think also what's important, again, I mentioned the GPA, how important that is. If the job that you're going for requires a minimum GPA, don't let it knock you out by not putting that on. If it doesn't require a GPA and your freshman, sophomore year, you don't want to put it on quite yet, that's okay. It's really for those jobs that require a minimum GPA, and spell that out. Make sure that you do that to give yourself the best shot at getting that interview. Again, any scholarships that you got or Dean's List, anything like that, don't be afraid to put Dean's List 6 out of 8 times on the resume. Spell that out. Be proud. It's okay to really sell yourself on that. That's, again, how you're going to get into the door for that interview. I think the next point, this section, the experience. How many of you have had an internship or a part-time job? Beautiful. You want to highlight that. That is who I seek. I want those who are working hard, paying for school, helping their way for their education. I can tell you I worked all throughout high school and all throughout college, and that's the work ethic that I want. And I love to see that. Show me that, you have some experience and you're able, again, to balance and prioritize all that it takes to be a student here on top of working. So ensure that you are spelling out how long that you've worked there, too. If you've worked there, all throughout school and summer, call that out. If you had an internship while working part-time, make sure that I can see you did both of those during the summer. Try and enjoy your summers. I'm going to say that, though, because once you get into the full-time realm, I don't have a summer vacation. I'm still learning that. But I think really being able to highlight and call out, your tenure there, how long you've been at a company. It's going to show loyalty that you're able to continue working while in school, seeking that internship. Make sure that you spell out the company, the title that you had there, and the years that you've been there. That's really important to me. If it's an internship and you don't just want to put 2017, you can put June 2017 through August 2017 if you have an internship coming up this year. I see that all the time. That's perfect. I know, you clearly were full-time intern there. Go ahead and do that, or don't be afraid to put I waitress for 8 years. So I think my resume said something like 2006 to 2013 or something crazy like that. Again, I'm quite old sitting in this room, but make sure that you are highlighting that out and leveraging, again, those job descriptions, the posting, anything you can find, even if you're currently employed, to say, hey, do you have a job description of this? Do you have something that I could leverage in building my resume? If you go to your boss, your colleague, your coworker, someone, they're going to be able to help you, and really allow you to showcase what you've been doing and the duties that you were hired specifically for. Leadership is huge for the job that I recruit for, with it being a management development program. I want to find my future leaders. I want to find those who are going to be okay with taking on a managerial role 1 to 3 years with the bank. So where can I find that from? Is it being a part? I really recruit heavily from a lot of sororities and fraternities. I look specifically for the members of an e-board of a club. My favorite are co-founders of a club. If there's something that you want to bring to Delaware State that it didn't have before you got here, that's real leadership to me, all that it takes to get a club up and running. Definitely looking, are there any student athletes in the room? Hello, that is my hugest population. That is what I seek, because I was a student athlete myself, so I know all that you have to do in terms of prioritization, time management, and you've been a team player your whole life. That's who I want to work with, and that's who I want to work for. So really calling that out. If you're not captain of the team, I know that you've helped a teammate or taken someone under your wing on the team. So definitely spell out if you're a student athlete involved with that. I'll give you an example of someone who I recently hired. She's a student athlete as well. Put the hours a week, 20 to 30, weight room on top of strength and conditioning coach, on top of traveling for games, practice, all of that. I know, but if there's a recruiter sitting next to me who wasn't a student athlete, they might not understand all that it takes. It's not just a fun pickup game of basketball on a Friday night. No, it's my whole week. Sundays sometimes coach gives me off, but call that out. That's real leadership that I'm looking for. Someone who's team player. At my bank is a little bit different than maybe other banks, in the sense that we are not cutthroat. We are not about the me of it. We're about the we. And that's why I need individuals who have proven success on a team. So finding ways to highlight that leadership, that on-campus involvement, what makes you excited? That's what I want to hear in an interview, but also what I can pick up on when you're crafting your resume. I think skills are definitely important, especially depending on the job that you're going for. If you're going for a marketing internship, they're going to need to know that, yeah, I know what Instagram is, I know what Twitter is, but I can do Photoshop. Don't be afraid to highlight the things that you're passionate about that someone not in the recruiting realm might say, that's not relevant. No, it is. It's relevant to the job that I'm going for. It might be an ideal qualification saying, basic use of social media and Photoshop. You can put that on your resume, especially it's going to help to showcase, what you're going to be good at. So don't be afraid to highlight the skills that you have, whether it be software or specific social media. I think what's also really important, I have zero exposure to any type of coding, any type of statistical software, anything like that. But when I see it, I know how hard it is for someone to understand coding or SAS or Java, or I see it all day. I don't know 100% how to do it, but I know, oh, you're going to be really good in an analytical or a technical role at the bank. And I'll say, did you teach yourself this? How did you learn this? And it shows me that, you're driven, that if you taught it yourself or you took a class that you didn't think that you would do well in and you did, you learned something from it. Those are the people who I want at the bank. Also, what's really important, especially in the bank, is different languages. Even if it's, working proficiency in Spanish. That's what my resume says. Took it for 8 years, love it. Still working on it, learning it. I can do sign language as well. So call that out. Even if it's not relevant to the job, it might be. And it might be something on a resume when you get employed at a company, you stay there. They might be doing a search of their whole database of everyone working there. They need someone who can speak Spanish for something, an event coming up, a presentation. Don't be afraid to call, those specific skills out as well. The interests line. Does anyone have this on a resume or have ever heard of it? So I'm a little bit quirky. I'm a little bit different, but I love to see it. One line, very subtle at the bottom of it, but it's an absolute conversation starter. It catches my eye, and it's something. If you tell me that you've traveled to 26 countries, that's amazing. Like something like that. Trying to keep it, maybe not, it's going to be the most relevant to the job, but obviously in a professional type setting. Again, different languages that you might know. If you like cooking, if you like trying different things, if you play sports, that's usually my first one. Were you a student athlete? Did you play in high school? I ask a lot of questions like that. But my boss made me pitch this. He's been with the bank 17 years, all in recruiting. But my bottom line, it says raise snakes and breed mice for feed. So we don't want you to put that on there. But he had a resume, absolutely qualified, 100%, great resume, but his interest line, it just said, raise snakes? Raise snakes and breed mice for feed. Now, he didn't meet him. He was qualified, everything was on, but he's like, that makes me kind of question, what are we going to talk about? What does this person actually want to do? So again, trying to keep it as relevant as possible or in a professional setting. If you want to call out travel or hobbies, cooking, golfing, something like that, that is okay. But he always makes me highlight this so that if you're going to do an interest line, make sure that you don't put something that's going to go, what? So he pitches it and presents it always. But he's like, tell him about the snakes and the mice. I'm like, okay, I'll tell him about the snakes and the mice. But again, it could, if you have that interest line, could be a yellow flag. So make sure that it's something that could be that conversation starter. I just had a woman interview with me, and she holds the Guinness Book of World Record for cup stacking. That's cool. That you can put on there if you had something like that. But that was the first thing. I'm like, I have to know. Tell me about this. She's like, it's just a weird hobby. I'm not very good anymore, but when I was 12, 13, I could do it really well. I practiced all the time. So fun, unique. Then she put it aside. Then we focused specifically on there. But, is that why I selected her resume? No. It wasn't until I met with her that I actually saw that. But still kind of a fun way to make an interview setting too, which could be nerve-wracking, could be uncomfortable. You interview with me, it's a lot of fun, I'll tell you that. But, how do you really kind of relax. And if a recruiter sees that, calls that out, a manager who you're interviewing with, that's fun. That's a lot of fun. So think about, what would make sense. And again, not 3 lines, the bulk of your resume being your interests, but just 1 line with a couple commas on things that are unique to you that, might help you to land that job. So I've given a couple of examples of what I call the do's and don'ts. Again, coming from someone who has to update her resume, I promise, next week or 2, that's my homework, I will do that. But I think what's really important is to be specific, and it's not necessarily being too bold about it, but tell me what you did, what you accomplished, the hours per week, again, with the student-athlete example. Tell me about the budget that you managed being the treasurer for a club here. Tell me about the number of people who you were responsible for training, for leading, for being their supervisor. Make sure that there are some numbers that I can really dig into. If it's a budget for, I see a lot of people who start clubs on campus, managed a budget of $1,000. Well, that's fantastic, because I know that club wasn't there when you started, and you were able to allocate funds with probably members of this newly acquired group that they wanted it to go elsewhere. So it doesn't matter how small or large the budget that you managed it and kept it and got others to understand the priority of that budget. So make sure that you call that out. It's important for me to know. If it just said manage a budget, it's going to be the first question I ask. Well, how much was it? How did it go? Did you go under? Did you spend too much? Again, we work for a bank, so we're very conservative in where the budget goes. But to see that, call that out. Don't be afraid that, it's too small. I managed 3 interns under me when I was a senior intern. That's amazing. And call that out, I think, is really important. So to dig in and be as specific as possible. If you are working in a restaurant situation, again, waitress for way too long, but I really was pointed on my resume to call out how many tables did I have per hour. I worked for a family-owned company, so there were 2 waitresses on and could have anywhere from 150 to 300 people coming in a night. Totally understaffed, but it was fun, and I knew everyone who I waited on for all those years. So to call that out and to explain then to me, that's going to say, you're able to work in difficult situations. You're able to manage a lot being thrown at you, and customers can be not so nice at times. And, really to quantify as much as you can, especially hours per week. If it's a full-time internship on top of a full-time job, on top of you have a strong GPA here, I want to see that, know that, and those are the people that I'm going to call right away. I'm not going to wait for the on-campus interview. I want to interview them that same day or the next day. So a couple of examples, again, here's my student athlete who I just hired. She's being modest, 25 to 30 hours per week. It's all she does. It's what she lives and breathes. And as you know, it's basketball season. So I got to hear of, an upset that they had, an awful loss by 1 point. But that's resilience right there. That's crazy adaptability, and being able to be a teammate is what I look for. So call out those hours and how much it takes, even in the off season. I know that, but is the manager who you're interviewing with going to know that? I think another important component is own it. Own what you do at an internship, in a group project, your thesis, anything like that. Really being able to spell out a process. So I love this example that she assisted in the organization, the evolution, and the execution. So I know that I can ask her tell me about the struggles that you had, first being given this project. How did you define it? How did you understand what you really had to do? What do you mean by evolution? What did you do on your own and take and run with it and build this out and make it, more than just what your boss or your team expected of you? And then execution, where were the struggles that you had along there? Where was someone who didn't agree with what you were trying to do? How did you kind of pivot or figure out what you could do next? But, really owning the process that you had. I think it's definitely relevant at an internship or even a group project. If you have a professor who said, this is going to be your final project, okay, this was the project we were given. We took it a step further and also wanted to look and analyze this. Here's how we executed, even with a group member down, just not showing up, not doing their part. Show that, in your resume in a concise way, but can be done clearly with these buzzwords. I love to hear about ownership, Being able to be responsible for a team. That evolution word just keeps calling out. So she was a part of a rigorous process to make the project then what it was. Owning that, these different buzzwords. I think what I really like with this one, it's a lot. I'd probably want it a little bit more concise. This is a couple of month internship, and look at all the bullet points she could call out that are, I work in HR, so looking at this, it stuck out to me like, I wish she was my intern. To be able to say, here's what I was either a part of or took and ran with on my own. So think about really leveraging strong buzzwords, that the action words that you can pull out of a resume. It's what I look for. I want to know that you were responsible for something, you took charge of something, and you did it well. So that's really where, when you take one of these home, you can look at some of these examples of those buzzwords to showcase that process that you are a part of. Here's my favorite one. So I am a very qualitative person. That analysis, quantitative numbers, I don't love so much. I'm getting myself there. But these examples, I can see a true balance in their summer internships of quantitative ability and qualitative ability. So if you're working in a finance sector in a bank, obviously being able to analyze data, look at numbers, produce reports, but I also want to hear, how did you put those numbers into a presentation and successfully explain it or deliver it? So really thinking of ways, how can I showcase I was able to do the work well, look at spreadsheets, interpret them, but also telling the story and conveying it to someone like me, no quantitative ability at all, trying really hard to get there, but how do you make it relevant, relatable, and to showcase that balance of quantitative and qualitative, that kind of left and right brain is what I look for. I don't even think these people intentionally did that, but to me that's the way that it reads, that they were able to do not only the work that they were hired for, data-driven, numbers-based, but also prepare it into a presentation, synthesize it, kind of break it down so that people who aren't in that department understand the point, understand the numbers, the bottom line, and understand kind of what's going to happen next then. I think that's, really important. I touched on this earlier. Again, an objective statement, it's not a deal breaker for me, but these are two examples just from this year, just from this month, of objective statements. One telling me that they want to work in consulting. Now, that's going to make my conversation a little bit different, and I can say there are some jobs that I would classify them as an internal consultant at the bank, but we're not a consulting firm. So when I see that, it's, were they lazy? Or did they hear about the job that I would pitch as an internal consultant, and that's what they want to go for? That wasn't the case, but I was going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But, is this really where they want to be? Do they actually want to work at M&T, or are we just another company to do an interview with and to maybe get an offer to negotiate with a consulting firm? That's kind of careless to me. So again, if they didn't put an objective on there, would I have selected them? Probably, because the resume was great, but that's a key point. If they're submitting their resume for a job that has nothing to do with consulting, that's a hard sell for me. This second objective up here clearly didn't update the resume from the year before, but seeking an internship while applying to our full-time position, and she graduated in December of 2016. Was she really looking for an internship to kind of figure out if she wanted to go on to pursue a master's degree or an MBA? Maybe, but she applied specifically to our full-time management development program. So that to me just, again, was a careless mistake on this candidate's part, that I need, if it's going to be an objective statement, spell out that, yes, I want to obtain a position with M&T Bank in the management development program. If you then apply for Deloitte, you can spell out, I want to obtain a position with Deloitte in consulting. You can, definitely, it's a quick fix. Just make sure that if you're going to do that for those jobs that you're going to apply for electronically, that it works. If you're at a situation like this, going kind of around to different tables, I'd leave it off or have it generic to obtain a position that's really going to allow me to advance and leverage the skills that I've learned so far at Delaware State, continue to build and develop them in a career. That's perfect. It's not necessarily generic, but doesn't spell out the company or the specific title of the job that the company is recruiting for. This would be a don't. Content is fantastic. I interviewed this candidate, gave him an offer. So it isn't a deal breaker for me, so to speak, if I get to meet them. It was literally an event sort of like this, where the resume was handed to me, and I said to Career Services, help this candidate out. It reads like a cover letter, where to me it said, he spent a lot of time on the cover letter and then kind of copied and pasted. And the content, again, it's good, but it's not concise enough for a resume. Where also, if you look closely, again, I'm crazy with my eyes looking at this all day, but the summary and the profile are lowercase, where the different portions are all capitalized. Again, not a deal breaker, so to speak. I got him an offer. I got him to update and correct his resume a little bit, but the content was there in the sense that I knew he was technical and he was fun. He was his 4-year student athlete on the basketball team. I'm taking a shot at that. And let's see if he's coachable, like I know student athletes are. We got to tweak your resume a little bit. He came right back, and it definitely was. He did his work, but it really was copy and pasting from the cover letter. Now, it's an awesome story if you look at it, but, it hurts your eyes a little bit, and this isn't all of it. There was a second page where it just said relevant work history, where he listed all of his courses and the professors and the grade. Now, it was fun that I got to see, he took these crazy hard classes. He had a wonderful, diverse background in terms of the classes that he took for electives were not related to his major, and I asked him on that, and he said, I wanted to make the most of my time, and I wanted to learn things that I wouldn't necessarily learn otherwise. So I loved him. I took a shot on him, again, because I got to meet him, where if I saw this resume in my specific resume drop when I'm selecting for who we're going to interview on campus, I don't know if this would have gotten the interview. I met him at an event. I'm like, I'm going to take a shot on this, and it worked. Unfortunately, he declined to go to Google, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll get him back someday. But again, not to highlight, nothing's wrong necessarily with the content other than the formatting, not concise, and the capitalized and lowercase in the headings. That bothers me. So, otherwise, I really just wanted to open it up for questions for you. I know I covered a ton of info, but on here, I'm going to have this presentation as well as my contact info, everything like that. But are there any questions about my crazy long-winded presentation so far? Absolutely. So for everyone, the question in the room was about showcasing your accomplishments in the sense of athletic accomplishments. Absolutely, to answer your question. And I think it's, understanding what was the record of the season, or were you recognized as, a specific champion of that game, an MVP or an All-American athlete, something like that. Do not hesitate to call that out. I think that's again something that you're going to be shocked by how many student athletes are at the bank. We're going to ask you on that as well, but definitely do that. Thank you. Oh, wait. For those who ask questions, you get the secret M&T swag sunglasses. My boss makes me wear these at work. I'm not kidding. Go ahead. Definitely. So for everyone in the room, the question was, how far back should you go in terms of highlighting experience or accomplishments? I'd say, obviously having some experience here and probably high school as well. If it's something that you want to call out in terms of, a leadership experience that you had in high school, a position that you had, if you worked throughout high school on top of then going through the almost full-time job of applying to colleges, call that out, definitely. My resume will still, even though I've been with the bank almost 4 years, I'm definitely going to put the waitress experience for 8 years on to showcase my loyalty and the fact that, if I accept a position, I'm going to stay there. So I would call out as much as you can, but really trying to keep it to one page if you can, and manipulating the margins, to make that possible. But is there something that you'd want to highlight? Something you're thinking about, was it work history or something like that? Oh, perfect. Definitely call that out then. Absolutely. Definitely. So, question in the room, should your resume be one page? Absolutely, I would say. I think when you get to the point where you have 20 plus years of experience at 10 different companies, then it's not going to fit on one page, but I would definitely recommend at this point to keep it to one page if possible. And there's different ways that you can do that in terms of, what you spell out in terms of your education portion, as well as your work experience section. You still want to sell yourself, right, and give yourself enough space to do so. But I think to be able to think about what are the key crucial tasks that I did, what I owned, what I accomplished, calling that out in the interview, you can get more into the specific day to day. So thinking more of the successes that you had, calling that out on the resume to try and keep each, let's say, work history section to 3 bullet points. Your education kind of just being a 3 line. If you have room for the interests, call it out if it's something fun. 1 line though, but I think you could manipulate it with the margins and the spacing to keep it on one page. Good question though. Mhm. Great question. So I would say if your major GPA is higher, you can definitely call that out. And what I'll look for if it's not a cumulative GPA of a 3.0, I look for that in the cover letter. And sometimes I get the best explanations, about I was working full time. I didn't pursue the major that I thought I'd want. I thought that I wanted to be pre-med or engineering, and that is not the fit for me. And when I read that in a cover letter, you're self-reflective. You're being able to hold yourself accountable, and you got into the major that you want, and it correlates into a job with me. That's the perfect scenario. So, cover letters I don't think, again, are deal breakers, but I read them, and it tells me even more about you, more about the story. But with those cover letters as well, so important to not have typos or grammar, just as the resume is as well. But I really look for, tell me the story. And I dig then more into it. And those are sometimes the best conversations, the best interviews that I've had, to hear the resilience factor. That's who I want to work with and, again, work for. Hmm. So I don't know for every company, but in terms of credit score, M&T Bank only does it for specific positions. It wouldn't have to be called out within a resume or within a cover letter. But when we get to the background check process, credit reports are really only going to be necessary for those negotiating the terms of a loan, a mortgage, something like that. So if you're coming to work as a recruiter, your credit score wouldn't be important. But if you were going to then apply for a mortgage position, or someone who's going to be working in front of customers negotiating the contract of any type of auto loan, car loan, things like that, then credit score would be a part of the background check process. But really what M&T is looking for, do you owe M&T a certain amount of money, is really kind of where they're like, uh-oh. But definitely not anything you'd have to spell out in the interview process or on your resume. Really would come about in the background check only if it's applicable to the job that you're going for. Absolutely. Great question. One of my favorite and most authentic stories. I hope you can see that. But the question for everyone in the room was, how did I get involved with M&T? So I'm from Buffalo, which is where we are headquartered. And my family has always been involved in the community. I've just been raised in terms of giving back. And there has not been, I kid you not, an event that we weren't involved with where M&T wasn't at, whether it be in a sponsor or just employees, not there on behalf of M&T, but the people there are so genuine, and they have this desire to love what they do in a 40-hour work week, but they have something that's a little bit more important to them. And I love my job. I hope you can see that, but I really want to do what's best for the community, and I know that M&T I get to do that. And it's a different level of, again, authenticity that you're going to come across people who will tell you about what they're involved with because of the bank, and involved with not because of the bank, but how the bank is now helping in terms of monetary contributions or volunteerism, our efforts. So I interviewed with a few other larger companies during my senior year who couldn't answer the question that M&T could ask. I asked every interviewer, what has this organization allowed you to do from a philanthropic standpoint? M&T, all of my interviewers answered that and more. I got to hear, oh, I'm the Boy Scouts leader for my son. I'm, involved in this and that. And they were the only company that asked me about my volunteer experience on my resume. So that's what I wanted. I wanted a company that I believed in and knew that I was going to work with people who cared about the same things that mattered to me.
I'd like to thank Ms. Russo for
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
got some glasses to give away. Thank you for your
Oh my
questions.
gosh. See, I told you I'm scatterbrained. I won't remember. But thank you all so much.
And now we have Goliath Demisi. Yes, ma'am. He is originally from Ethiopia, moved to Virginia when he was 10. He, I'm sorry, I gotta get to the mic. Okay. Goliath Demisi, originally from Ethiopia, moved to the United States when he was 10, had a love for flight. So after graduating with his Bachelor's of Science in Aerospace Management, he earned a Master of Business Administration and a Master of Arts in Management and Leadership from Liberty University. He was a flight instructor, and then he got a full-time position with Express Jets, and he is commissioned in the United States Coast Guard. So he has an airline career and a Coast Guard career, so he's from a different perspective, but they have resumes too, and they're jobs in the airlines that are not just flying. So for all that, there are options. So without further ado, you have to stay at this mic.
I speak really loud. So, anyway, good morning, everybody. How you guys doing? Excellent. I do apologize about being late. Unfortunately, my airline was late last night, so I didn't get in until about 2 o'clock. By the time I got in, I can, I guess I have to use this. Oh, okay. Here, I can sit down. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so I didn't get in until about 2:30 last night, or this morning rather. So I couldn't get a rental car, and then this is the earliest opportunity I can get here. So I really do apologize about being here late. That being said, I do work for both the airlines and the military. So if you guys have any questions about the opportunities in both the military world and also the airline world, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'm sure Ms. Brusso kind of covered the vast majority of the important things, and I do apologize about missing it earlier. But anyway, so the one thing I would like to talk to you guys about is your resume, right? Your resume speaks to who you are. So I do interviews for my airline, so when we are hiring pilots. The way it works is that you have to apply, right? Your application process speaks to who you are first, and then your application basically works with your resume. So we only bring you in based on your application. I don't get to see your resume in the airlines. It's the same thing with the military. So when I do interviews for the military, you have to apply, and the military application is about that thick. There's really no resume first. Your resume really comes in when you're actually doing your face-to-face interview. So the most important thing on a resume, or excuse me, on your application, is figuring out what job that you're applying for, making sure that your job specifications that you're really applying for example, for pilots, right? Some companies say flight officer. In my company, we say flight first officer. Some other airlines would say pilot. So just make sure that the job specifications that you're really applying for, because that actually tells the company that you've done the research, right? And on top of that, spell the company's name correctly. That's the first thing that really gets people eliminated from my airline and also from the military. So I've done interviews with people that say, I want to be in the Coast Guard. I'm like, okay, cool. Tell me a little bit about the Coast Guard, right? The first thing I see is that they misspell coast. So I know that you're really not interested in the Coast Guard at that point because you can't even spell the name correctly, right? And the other thing is when you're telling me about the jobs about the Coast Guard, right? If you're telling me that you want to be a tank officer, we don't have tanks. We're a seagoing service. So I can't help you with that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, make sure you do your research on the companies, right? Even if it's a government organization, make sure you do your research. Sit down. Think about what that organization really stands for. Good example. A friend of mine didn't get hired at JetBlue Airways for one thing. And JetBlue is a really great company. They really, really go above and beyond, and they really, they sell you, they call it the blue juice. basically they want you to drink the Kool-Aid of JetBlue, right? So for his interview, he's been applying since 2004 to JetBlue Airways. And they have for that company, they only open their window twice a year. So he's been applying since 2004 until 2015, twice a year, every year. So they've had a stack of his resumes, right? The first thing that interview person gave to him was the first resume that he's ever submitted to them. It says JetBlue Airlines. And again, they say JetBlue Airways. And that's how his interview went, from the beginning to the end. So they were like, what is your commitment to our airline? And I don't blame them, because it's a very competitive world, right? For my industry, you're looking at a multi-million-dollar career. So why should they give you that opportunity? Whether it's MNT or any company, they're giving you a livelihood, right? Why should they give you that opportunity to join their group? Because at the end of the day, you're their brand ambassador. So they want to make sure that you buy into whatever they're selling, right? If it's a bank, do you believe in what the banks do? If it's an airline, do you believe in airline world? If you come in and tell me that, and I'll tell you another story. I flew with a gentleman that went to interview with Federal Express. And FedEx and UPS for the airline world is the cream of the crop jobs. Those are the guys that get paid the most. Those are the guys that have the most amount of days off. It's one of those really great jobs to get, right? So this guy who is a very, very motivated, Ivy League educated person, super, super talented, right? Great pilot. I've flown with him a bunch of times. But he sat on his interview and told them about how many UPS stores he has. And he's at a Federal Express interview. They were like, okay, so why did you not open a FedEx shop? And his response to them was, UPS gives me more of a profit margin. Can you guess if he got hired or not? No. So make sure you buy into that company, right? Again, I said earlier, make sure you research it, figure out what you want to do, and buy into the company. And Ms. Brusso also told you guys about GPA. For the airline world, we always say, unless you have more than one degree, if you only have one degree, highlight your GPA if it's above a 3.5, because that's what we really give you credit for. If you're doing extracurricular activities, for example, myself, I'm part of the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. So to me, that's the most amount of volunteer work I do, and I get involved in that a lot. So when I do interviews and somebody says, I'm part of OBAP, or Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and I've never seen you, I'm going to be like, all right, what do you do? Right? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you do at OBAP? And if you can tell me a little bit about it, your interview is going to go way easier. And that's what extracurricular activities do. Because at the end of the day, when you're coming out of college with a finance degree or aerospace engineering degree, everybody around you is going to be somewhat similar. You guys are all going to have the same type of knowledge, right? What's going to set you apart is what you do outside of school. So that's my big recommendation for everybody. Figure out what you want to do, what company you're going to go to. Write a cover letter that reflects the core values of that company. Like Ms. Brusso said, I love reading cover letters, and I'm somewhat of a grammar person. So that one thing that really sets me off is somebody that does not know how to write, that submits a halfway complete cover letter, like I should waste my time on it. You see what I'm saying? Because the company's pulling me offline from flying to read your cover letter. So that's time wasted on the company. It's actually time wasted on my end, because if I'm reading something you haven't even edited, why am I here, right? It's the same thing in the military. When I'm sitting across the table from somebody that hasn't even done the due diligence to do their own edits, why should I even sit there? Why should I waste my time? I can go do something else. I got plenty of other stuff to do, right? So I recommend that you guys go find somebody else, go to the writing center, or whatever you guys have here, and ask somebody to go through your cover letter for you, because when somebody else looks at it, that's your first impression before you even show up to your interview. Okay? So pretty much all I've got. I've seen her presentation. It's pretty much the same thing. I've got, the shameful stuff, but that's about it. Like bad resumes, good resumes, what stands out. The one thing that I have in there that I wish I can show you guys is on the application process, make sure you're cognizant of what you're putting in. As a military person, I've really gotten ticked off at an Army individual that said that his salary in the Army was laughable. And the first thing we did, it was 3 pilots. All of us are, one guy was a Navy fighter pilot, and the other guy's an Air Force fighter pilot. The 3 of us did his interview. And the first thing we showed him was, and highlighted, and I kid you guys not, and I have a picture of it, highlighted his salary laughable. That's how his interview started. So if you're going to have a couple of cocktails while you're filling out something, just be cognizant somebody else is on the other side reading it. Yeah. And obviously I've taken his name out, and I will never forget that person for the rest of my life. I remember his name. I remember his supervisor's name etched in my mind. So if I ever see him somewhere else, or if you're, for example, Southwest Airlines, anytime they hire a pilot, they always send out a blast mail to everybody saying, do you know Goliath Demissi? If somebody at Southwest Airlines as a pilot does not like you, they write an email. Same thing at Federal Express, same thing at United, same thing at American. Somebody can sink your career. I'm not one of those people that's going to do that, but I don't know who the other 2 are. You see what I'm saying? Anybody? Yeah, so being a pilot is actually probably the biggest, it's the least amount of jobs in the airline world. We have tons of people that make the airline work. So we have finance people, we have airport management people, we have catering people. So we have chefs in the airline world. So anything that you guys think about in the real world, there's probably a job for you in the airline industry. So yeah, in fact, you probably have a better travel benefits than I do because you'd be considered a management person, and management people bump line pilots. So yeah. Yes, ma'am. Uh, we need the sport management people too because, for example, United Airlines was the Olympics airline, right? So they had to have somebody that understands sports. In fact, the young lady that ran that whole thing, I think she was a sport management person. I've talked to a couple of them, so I know they had a different degree. One of my mentors was a sociology major, and he's a pilot. But just because you're sports management people doesn't mean that there isn't a job for you. All of the companies, whether it's American, Delta, United, JetBlue, whoever, they all contract out their airplanes to teams. So if you have some sort of something in common that you can speak to them and you can bring something of value to that airline, obviously you're going to be valued. So just because you're sports management people doesn't mean that there isn't a job for you in the airlines. Yes, ma'am. Well, it's a very technical field, so our HR department can't necessarily pick the technical aspect of it. So we work in conjunction with HR. So they ask the HR questions. You don't want me to ask HR questions because I'm not trained in it, and I probably wouldn't write down the right answer anyway. So I ask the technical questions, and then there's an HR person that asks the HR aspect of it. In fact, the human resources department has more of a say on who gets hired than we do. So unless that person is so grossly incompetent in the technical aspect, I would say it's probably a 60-40 vote. 60% is HR. So that's the way it works in most airlines. And the bigger carriers, when you're flying with somebody that's 17 hours from, like, let's say Sydney or Los Angeles to Sydney, right? Really long haul flight. They want to make sure that you're going to be playing nice with everybody else. They don't want to have like conflicts between people. Flight attendants are the same thing. Human resources picks the flight attendants. Same thing with every job in the airline world. So HR plays a huge role on who gets hired. Same thing in the military, by the way. We have human resources officers in the military that get to pick, the good candidates. I, you're gonna, yeah, yeah, definitely come by and talk to me later on.
She was like, wait, French.
I'm just like, I want to be you, but
Anyway,
Some of the other majors we have here. I know we have got sport management, we got hospitality. What's in accounting? Okay, okay.
we need accountants, by the way, because if we don't have accountants, then the airline doesn't work. So same thing in the military. We have finance officers. So uh, I'm not sure how accountable you're going to be in the military to anything, but we have accountants, and as far as I know, most of them are pretty happy. So, and you're not really getting deployed as much. So you're home. You're probably going to be in DC a lot, but you'll have a pretty good career. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Uh,
Those who are not.
I guess that's the airline industry itself is going through a kind of a weird moment right now. Um, I can kind of go both ways for ATC. We already have private air traffic controllers in smaller airports. Uh, don't really know how I feel about the national air traffic system going to a private industry. I don't know. I just don't know what the consequences would be as far as who pays and how much you have to pay and how that increases the cost for doing business. I'm just not well versed in that, so I'm sure there's benefits to it, and then I'm sure there's drawbacks to it as well. I've been flying since 2001. I've yet to see a gross negligence on anybody's part from air traffic control. Uh, my knee-jerk reaction is that maybe we're looking for something to fix where there's really no issues to fix, but that's just my own personal opinion. Um, I again, I'm not well versed in it to say this is a good thing or a bad thing. But as far as I'm concerned, every air traffic control person I've ever met has been a very very professional individual. So I don't know what their outlook of this is, but this is a brand new thing. For those of you that don't know, this is a new proposal that just came out. So I just not well versed in it.
Any other questions? So accounting, you can move flying to, sport management, you can get some of the teams, get on one of their planes.
But I just went to Nicaragua for $30 last week. So for all of you guys that really want to go, last year I was in Sydney. I think I paid $70. So if you really want to go do something different, highly recommend. Mhm.
You want to do something different, because it ain't for free.
It- it's a really good job, and you get to see the world. Delta, United, American, all of the big carriers, Southwest, all of those guys are hiring at an incredible rate right now. Your 401k contribution and all that. If you add in everything and how little do you actually work compared to everybody else, and how much work you don't take home, I would say the airline industry is pretty good. Because once I open the main cabin door, I really have zero worries about what happens. I don't take any work home. So if I have 18 days off at home, those are my time off at home. So some guys do 20, 25 plus days off. It's just, that's for you to do whatever you want to do at home. So the minimum time off we have is 12. So
Well, I would like to thank Megan and Goliath for sharing with us today. Make sure you turn in your evaluations, the yellow sheet on your way out, the lunch ticket. You get another one when you go to the keynote presentation. Can you hear me? You'll get another one when you. Thank you, Megan and Goliath, for your presentation today. Turn in your evaluations on your way out. Make sure you have your name on it and give us some feedback. Your lunch ticket, keep that. You'll get another one at the keynote too, and then you get the box lunch afterwards. When you come out the keynote, we have lunch for those of you.